Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at Fairy Tail for the Nintendo Switch. Game is also available on the PS4 and PC via Steam. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link down in the description down below, or you could click on the card that will appear up on this video. When it comes to anime or manga or anything like that, there are a couple that do interest me and all. Ghost in the Shell is certainly one of those. A friend of mine showed that to me, and it's certainly one of my favorite ones. Also, other ones are like Ronin Kenshin, Inuyasha, Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, if I'm saying the name correctly. Apologize if I'm not. And of course, the Sword Art Online as well. But as far as Fairy Tail goes, that one hasn't really clicked with me as much. I've heard of it though. I know that it's from the same person who did, I believe, one called Rave Master and all, but I never really got into it as much, I mean, compared to the other ones or anything like that. So it was kind of interesting to hear that Koei Tecmo was going to be working on it, using that license and turning it into a RPG. Well, after investing several weeks with it though and trying it out though, I will say that while I don't see this game here giving, say, like Final Fantasy or anything like that a run for its money, I will say it's not a bad game at all or anything like that. So we'll get started. We'll get started with our pros and cons, and we'll start with the first one, and that has to do with the pros. And that is the gameplay. And I will say the gameplay, as I mentioned, it's an RPG, but mostly a turn-based RPG. But what makes this one kind of interesting to a certain degree are a couple things. Number one, the game basically focuses mostly on your magic. You could do melee attacks or anything like that, but they won't be as strong as, say, your magic attacks and all. And what makes doing these kinds of attacks are kind of interesting is that basically there are certain like grids and all, and if you line up the grids on the enemies that right there, you could see yourself possibly doing, depending on the type of magic though, you could see yourself doing huge amount of damage to even damaging a lot of the enemies on the screen. So it's an interesting idea that they have for, say, the turn-based RPG approach that they have for this game. Another thing to point out is that you also have to keep an eye out, depending on which character you pick. You have to keep an eye on whether or not they are weak against your magic, or they can resist your magic as well. Another thing you could do is, like, you could build up a certain meter, and when that meter fills up, you could do like multiple damages, like do really tons and tons of damage. This could come in handy if you're facing off, say, like tougher enemies and so forth. So for the RPG mechanics though, I will say it's a fun turn-based RPG though. Even though it may not bring a huge amount to the table, it's still enjoyable nevertheless. The next thing I want to do and talk about is the story though, and while I'm not, like I mentioned before, I'm not the biggest Fairy Tail fan and all, but I've heard and read some of the stories here and there, and it doesn't feel like, even if you're not the biggest fan, some of it doesn't come off as like you wouldn't understand it or anything like that. It doesn't come off as like you have to be the most die-hard fan. So if you never read the manga or watched the anime or anything like that, you won't, I just didn't come off as feeling lost or anything like that. And last but not least, I do want to talk about is the graphics in the game, and I will say the graphics don't look entirely bad, at least on the Nintendo Switch, that is, to be exact. I will say the one highlight is that the game definitely, the characters look just like what they do, like if you've read any of the manga or seen any of the pictures or the anime, so they look very close to their counterparts and all, and that certainly isn't bad. And there are certainly some areas of the game that doesn't look as terrible or anything like that. Yes, the Switch isn't the most powerful system out there, but we've seen games that even on a Switch that isn't as powerful as, say, the PS4 or the Xbox One, that still holds up on its own and still looks well and all. And I will say, in terms of graphics though, I will say the Switch version, at least of Fairy Tail, doesn't look that bad or anything like that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, which are the cons. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Fairy Tail. Hopefully I'm saying the name correctly, for the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are really only 2 cons I could think of, though. And we'll start off first also with the visuals again. Now, as I mentioned before, I talked about how I don't think the game, graphically speaking, the game doesn't look that bad. And I still stand behind that, though. But I will say that while there are some areas in the game that look nice, there are some areas that don't exactly look, well, that impressive, though. Now, I will admit, and I will say this, though, I'm more of a gameplay over graphics kind of person. So the graphics in some areas that look pretty much low res or don't look that great don't bother me as much as it might for some people, though. They are noticeable, but they're not, as I would say, like awful or terrible or anything like that. So yes, there are going to be some areas in Fairy Tail on the Nintendo Switch that are going to look nice, and there are going to be some areas that don't look that great. And last but not least, I do want to talk about is the frame rate issue that is in this game. And I will say I've noticed this when playing Fairy Tail. When it comes to basically going into the combat side of the game runs fine and all that stuff. It runs at, I think, 30 frames per second, which, again, would have been nice if it ran at 60, but being this is not a fast-paced type of game, I'm not bothered with it running at 30 frames per second. The issue where I see the frame rate is mostly when you're walking around the world and all that stuff. It looks like it takes like a dip and all that stuff, and it's noticeable, to be exact. Now, to some people, this is going to be an issue and all that stuff, and I kind of agree with that argument to a certain degree. The thing is that being this is a turn-based RPG, it doesn't ruin the entire game. I mean, if we were talking about this being like a fast-paced type of a game, or like, say, like a warrior style of game, then I could see this becoming a major issue when you have a frame rate dip like that, especially if you're developing a game that is fast-paced or something like that. I mean, look at, say, like Ninja Gaiden as a good example of that. But being this is sort of a turn-based RPG and not a fast-paced type of game, I'm not bothered by the frame rate issue as much as some people are, but I will say it is kind of noticeable and all that stuff. And I do hope that the developers, Koei Tecmo and the developers, Gus, I believe they're the ones who handled bringing this game to Nintendo Switch. I do hope that they basically add maybe a patch to improve some of the frame rate and all. So yes, there are some frame rate issues, but like I said, being this is a turn-based RPG, it hasn't bothered me as much as some people out there. It might bother some folks out there. Also, despite the frame rate issue, I haven't experienced anything where the game basically kicked me out or do anything like that. So that's really the only major issue, at least the frame rate part, to be exact. Overall, I will say Fairy Tail for the for the Nintendo Switch is not a bad game or anything like that. The RPG mechanics are fun, even though they may not bring a huge amount of new things to the table. They're still enjoyable, and I like some of the ideas that they did with it, though. Story, doesn't feel like you have to understand it. I didn't feel like you had to read the anime or the manga or anything like that. They'll have, like, maybe if you a encyclopedia in the game where you could read and catch up if you miss out on all that stuff. And visually speaking, the game doesn't look that bad. But I will agree that there are some areas that don't look great and all that stuff. Some of that might be because the Switch isn't as powerful as the PS4 or Xbox One. And I will admit that there are some frame rate issues, mostly when you're wandering around the world and all. I really don't see that when you're in combat or in the turn-based RPGs. And like I said, while the frame rate issue is noticeable, I didn't find it into a situation that made the game unplayable for me or anything like that. So yeah, it's there, but it didn't bother me as much. But I do hope that this is an issue Koei Tecmo could address in the near future, maybe with a future patch. But overall, I would say for a licensed game, purely as a licensed game, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I mean, it's not going to give, say, like Final Fantasy or Xenoblade Chronicles will run for its money, I highly doubt that this game is even going to do anything like that. But I will say, as a licensed game, or like an anime licensed game, I would put it in the same category as Sword Art Online Halorization and Fatal Bullet Complete Edition were for the Nintendo Switch. And also, you maybe One Piece Unlimited Red. I would say that for a licensed game, or anime licensed game, it's good. It's nothing special. It's not going to give, like I said, any other RPGs a run for its money, but it's not bad either. And I could see maybe for those who are looking for another RPG to play on the Nintendo Switch, it's worth taking a look at. And I would say this one will probably appeal more towards, maybe the most diehard Fairy Tail fans out there. Some may like it, some may not, but I think this type of game is probably more towards them. But overall, I will say it's fun, and I'm having a good time with it. Okay, this concludes my video review of Fairy Tail for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Fairy Tail coming to the Nintendo Switch? Are you pleased that this game came to the Nintendo Switch? Have you tried it out? Have you played the game? Have you enjoyed it, or do you hate it? Are you pleased with the Switch version, or do you think it's better just getting the PS4 or the PC via Steam? And do you think they should bring out over maybe something like the Rave Master series over here? Do you think Koei Tecmo should handle that license, anime license as well? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!